And it's time once again for Chasing the Narrative, the show where Colin picks whoever he wants to interview and interviews them about whatever he would like and almost never talks about 40K. With me today is one of my favorite people on the entire planet, and you might think I say that a lot because I think I've said that almost every episode, but this time it's true. Chuck
I'm S tier.
Exactly, S tier guest. Chuck is one of my oldest friends at this point. That's because we're both getting old, but I actually meant longest friends. Chuck is one of my longest friends and one of my very, very closest friends. Was in my wedding. He's the only person I will tolerate housing with when we travel for a tournament. Chuck is absolutely one of the core people to not only my life, but also the Best in Tabletop Network. So for those that don't know, Chuck's been playing 40K for an incredible amount of time, longer than many of our fellow hosts have been alive. Mm-hmm. Chuck is an incredible artist, an incredible sculptor, I would say. What I mean is kit bashes, custom models. I actually think as good of a painter as Chuck is, I think he's even better at that. So we'll dig in a little bit on that as we get deeper. And Chuck has played at every different level. He's been one of the best players at the tournament. He's been someone learning a new army. He's been somebody who's just not found his feet in a new edition. Chuck's been in all those phases. So because of all that, we brought him on to Best in Faction with this idea that we'd have this kind of veteran calmness about 40K that would maybe calm Mitch and I down a little bit. And it turns out that's still correct. That we gave Best in Faction the Next Generation also has a cooler on the show with that exact thing in mind. So with all of that, I hope that you guys will absolutely dig in with me as we learn more about the non-40K side of Chuck. Welcome, Chuck.
Hey, thank you.
So this is weird, right?
Nah.
Like the thing that we're doing right now is weird, yes?
Like we're just waiting for Mitch. That's right? Like,
yeah, exactly.
He'll pop in here in a second. We'll be good to go.
Chuck and Colin in the morning. Yeah. So, Chuck, you have the weird experience of being the first person I invite to the projects I create.
Yeah.
So basically, sometimes in the middle of the night, I come up with a thing, and then I just schedule the thing, and I tell Chuck when he has to be there for the thing. So
I think my favorite is when you do that at like 2 a.m. and then I respond to you, and you're like, "Oh, great, let's talk."
I want to tell you all about the things now. So you've done Charity Hammer. You've been on the podcast. You're doing this. You went to ATC with us. Before we dive in, what is kind of your favorite community thing that you've done for 40K? Not like playing the game, but on this road of BS that Colin comes up with that we do and sometimes makes sense. What has been your favorite thing?
It's the Charity Hammer portion of it. Okay. For one, it's just super fun, right? Like that's a great weekend. Sometimes it's exhausting. There's parts of it that aren't fun.
Sometimes it's exhausting.
Well,
you're doing it wrong.
No, I don't do nearly. No, I am not. I'm like, I want 12-hour breaks between behavior. Like, I make space. I'm too old for whatever they're doing. But also then there's a lot of pride in like the amount of money that we raise and all that. So like it kind of feeds me from a bunch of different angles. It's also I get to see a group of people that I don't get to see regularly. Come out and do that. So
that's great. So that's the last week of June. We'll just drop that in there for anyone who happens to be interested in that. Okay, so we're gonna zoom all the way back now to childhood, Chuck. I met you when you were like 20, I think. So I don't have a lot of knowledge before that. I don't think you were 21 yet. I think you were probably.
No, I probably wasn't.
You were even younger than that, I think. You're 2 or 3 years older than me, and I was 16 when we met. So
I was probably 19, 20. Because I was working in the store while going to community college. So I'd finished high school. So somewhere in there.
Yeah. Okay, but way before that, you've talked to me a lot about your mom. I know that you and your mom have a really good relationship, and she's really important to you. So I'm curious about your dad, who you don't talk about, because this is Chasing the Narrative, and
all right,
we talk about the hard topics. So I'm just curious, who was your dad, and what did he do? What's significant about him in understanding Chuck is really more interesting than whether or not he was a good father, because lots of bad fathers so far in the Chasing the Narrative universe.
We'll see. I've resolved a lot of those feelings.
Good, because we're grown-ups.
Yeah. He's an incredibly social creature. Like
Okay.
if you were looking at his stat block, he's really high on social. Um, Good at making friends, good at organizing and bringing things together. Um, and so he managed a band for
Okay.
5 or 6, depending on where he was at. Played in a couple different ones as a drummer. As a very young child, I got to be a roadie and help set up equipment and go to bars when you're not supposed to be in a bar, and hang out and listen to play music and stuff. Um, and then later in life, he was a landlord.
Okay.
In the 80s. He bought into all of the houses when you could do that, and then rented them out and sort of kept that all afloat until he got really, really sick. He got some kind of disease that took them months to figure out even what he had, and that triggered really bad diabetes, and that just sort of caused a train of falling apart. And then he moved back to Oklahoma with his family and lived out the rest of his life there.
Okay. All right. Well, that's interesting to me because you've described your mom as a bit of more of a reserved person, right?
Hmm.
So the much like how I am from a somewhat reserved person and a social person, you kind of have that desire to be quiet and sit over here and do whatever Chuck wants to do, but you also have the desire to go see what these people over here are doing. I've
Yeah,
noticed that in you, and you
I need
sometimes you
all
have a
of the
hard time.
introversion and the extroversion.
Yeah, you have a hard time deciding which of the things to do sometimes when we're
Why? I don't get to decide.
okay.
My brain will decide what I need right now, and sometimes it doesn't match what I plan to do. So I have
Okay.
to be careful about it.
So you're actually this is not what I meant to ask about, but
Mhm.
in that moment, are you're actually really good at knowing if you need the quiet or if you need the
Oh,
social?
yeah. Um, I used to think of myself as really selfish, but actually I'm just really self-aware.
Okay.
And I do know basically what I need at most times. I'm not necessarily good about doing what I know I need.
Doing the thing that you need is different than acknowledging the thing that you need. Uh-huh.
Yeah, but I am aware of it.
Okay. That's good. That's an interesting thing because as we, and this will come up a few times, but one of the fun things about Chuck and my friendship is that while we have a lot in common, there's a number of things that are polar opposite in our personalities and how we
Yeah.
function that actually make us really good friends, right?
Mhm. Yeah, we
Like,
have some space to like not just be the same people running in step.
right. And I think we're also really, really understanding of each other's BS. And
Yeah.
one of the things you're understanding of is that I am often not self aware. Sometimes I flip out and I have no idea what's needed.
Mhm.
So the idea that I would be in a situation and my insights would go, well, this is actually what you need over here is really interesting to me because I don't. I have that occasionally, but it's very rare.
Yeah.
So fantastic. Okay, so that's dad. What did mom do when you were when we? I know that she's well retired now, but what did she
Yeah.
do when she was a younger person?
She's an electrical engineer.
Okay.
So she designed factories that would produce paper products,
Hmm.
from beginning to end. Like the logs come in via the water and they have to be turned into tissue paper, and there's a whole
Okay.
lot of shit that's got to happen in between. I got to brag a bit because I'm incredibly proud of her.
Okay.
She's a woman. She's 86. If you do the math on that, she was doing electrical engineering work when that
Yeah.
wasn't a thing women could do. They were too dumb for that, right? Like she was in that era of like every woman is looked down upon, and she was a highly sought after employee. So she kind of helped break that ceiling. Um, and it's funny when I talk to her about it, she doesn't even get it. She's like, "No, I just did better than they did."
Yeah. I
Right?
just did the thing I needed to do.
Yeah, she's like, "I just did my work. Whatever."
So is she a hyper pragmatic thinker then? Is she very
Yeah.
logical and it's very has to be ABC and there's not a lot of gray area?
Everything's got to be, yeah, it's got to be sorted out. Um, we got a couple of different diagnoses with some taste of autism, like,
Yeah.
and she's very good at masking and all that stuff. And but she can, not only does she like to think, in steps and in yes or no, but she's very good at going like, I will think of all 20 of these right at once, and I can conceive of this whole giant string, right? When you can get her to play a game with you, it's very, very humbling, uh, how quickly she will pick it up and destroy you.
That's great.
Um, but yeah, she's definitely that way. And then we were talking about the opposite. She's not the social being. I think by the time I was 6 or so, I was in charge of the house, just because I could just run circles around her from a
Someone has to be.
emotional perspective.
Yeah, I actually when my parents got divorced, I was probably 14, and my mom tells me now that I was the man of the house the minute we walked through the door. That
Mhm.
just my personality is it has a constant desire to make everything around me comfortable for me and everybody else.
Yep.
Like I to the extent that I'll destroy myself, but like I have this desire to make this to take over the situation I'm in and make it better.
Mhm.
And so I totally get that.
No, that's a piece that we share.
Yeah, I know. I know. We've talked about that a lot, actually.
Once everyone else is happy, then
There's
maybe I'll pay
there's a
attention to me.
question I'll share this with the viewers. There's a question you can ask yourself that tells you a lot about your internal wiring for comfort in social situations. And here's what you do: imagine that your three favorite people are over playing a board game. The four of you are playing a board game, and it's going really badly for one of your particular friends, and they're really unhappy and really sassy. Think about how you'll react in that situation, and you'll find out whether you're Chuck and Colin or whether you're everybody else. Because neither of us can tolerate that at all. We
No,
have to fix it, we have to make it
no.
better,
It's time
or
for cake.
stop playing. The game has to end if we can't fix it,
Yeah,
right?
that's the worst. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, guys. We have to stop playing now because Tim over here
Oh,
is not having a good
I'm
time.
so clumsy. I knocked the table over.
Yeah, exactly.
That's my
Okay.
fault. I'm bad.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I love this. I love that you have these two very different people that
Mhm.
I see both of. And then you have an older sister, I think,
Yeah.
but quite a bit older.
She's 14 years older than I am,
Yeah.
and she left for college when she was 16. So I have like a sister that's sort of more like an aunt kind of person.
And almost more like an acquaintance, I would guess, too. Like it sounds like
Yeah.
you never spent like she has the same connections you do, but you don't.
Yeah, we share a lot of family stuff, but we don't have a strong like sibling connection. We don't have all that stuff.
Yeah, okay.
Um, we are bonding more because now we're working with my mom and uh, her living in assisted living and stuff. So we're working together on a project, which is
Ooh.
probably the first time we've done that.
Yeah. It's weird how my brother and I were much closer together 4 years, but we didn't get along growing up. And now that we're grown ups with very similar problems, now we get along great.
Hmm.
Right? We have our parents that are a problem we share. Right?
Yep.
So they need things and we have to work together to make the things happen. Okay, let's fast forward a little bit. So I know you as an artist first.
Okay.
To me, if I'm designing, if I'm outlining Chuck's personality, I've got two traits that are above everything else, and one of them is art, and we'll talk about the other one later. And I want to leave it purposefully as a surprise. So the art one, to me, is you were an incredible painter when I met you,
Hmm.
which is a time in your life where no one's good at anything. Right, we're teenagers, we're not good at anything.
Yeah.
You were an incredible painter then. You did art. You studied art in school, right? You are still a really good painter to the point where it's actually relaxing to you to hobby, which a lot of
Yeah.
people it's not. They just want to get it done. When did the art show up? Do you know when? Like
No.
when? No, no. It just suddenly was there.
My mom has pictures of me like drawing with crayons and stuff all the way through. I can
And are
tell
they
you,
good?
I mean,
Like you've raised a
not
kid.
kidding, not
You know
debating,
what
but
kid
yeah,
artwork looks like.
she was very supportive of me
Okay.
creating things.
Yeah.
And I am an attention person. Like when I
Mhm.
receive positive attention, I go, "Ooh, exciting! Here, I did it 10 more times. Can I have 10 more, please?"
Weird. I can't relate. I can't relate to any of that.
No, it's weird, but
Welcome to the Best of Tabletop Network. I'm the creative director. Oh, sorry. No, go ahead. That was different. That's a different.
so I think that positive feedback loop just followed me all the way through my life.
Uh huh.
Um, and then let's see here. Let's see what I drew things. Right, I would just draw pictures. I would draw houses, horses, whatever. It didn't really matter. I enjoyed the process of using my hand and my brains at the same time. And then comic books happened.
Hmm.
And those are so cool. And so I just jumped into I have to try to figure out how to do this kind of artwork. And that just launched me into trying to learn all kinds of different kinds of artwork.
That's great. And then, did you read a lot of comic books as a teen?
Yes. I would say I read a ton of them. I understood some of them, but I enjoyed the pictures in all of them. And I would actually collect by artists that I appreciated,
Hmm.
and then artists that I couldn't like that I wanted to try to emulate. Everything from like tracing their work to just copying their work to like trying to emulate their style. Um,
Okay, that's
It's just
interesting. So I actually have a question about that I've never thought to ask you, but it's something that I've been wondering. So a few months ago, when you know that my hyperfixation had landed on Marvel for a while,
mhm,
I watched all the Marvel movies and I read a crap ton of the Marvel comic books. And
yeah,
as I was reading the comic books, I really enjoyed the story in a lot of them. Some of it was awful, but some of it story I really enjoyed. But for me, I felt like a lot of the 80s and 90s comic book artwork was trash.
mhm.
Like really, really bad. So is this a situation where we didn't know better, or even at the time, did you know that lots of the artwork wasn't good and you liked it anyways? Like I don't understand how I didn't realize how bad this was. I didn't read comic books when I was a teenager. So I don't know.
Yeah, somewhere in the early '90s, I think it was. Not super good at this timeline. Um, there was an explosion with Jim Lee, Jay Lee, Frank Miller. All these people came in and they brought a style to the
Okay,
artwork. Up until then, it was people iterating on sort of the golden age of like this is what a superhero looks like,
right.
and people getting better and better at presenting that.
Everything looks like 1950s
Yeah.
Superman.
But these
Right.
guys came in and they went like with like Jim Lee, he's like, here's extreme anatomy, and every piece of muscle is super shaded and high contrast and very interesting. And then like Jay Lee came in and he was like, I can throw ink at the page and manipulate it and make these like weird, almost grotesque but beautiful pictures
Okay.
and make on books. And like Frank Miller, if people are familiar with him, I'm sure because all the way to movies have
Yeah.
started to
I
copy
think
his
he's the
style,
most
right?
recognizable name in there, probably, right?
Yeah, probably. And his style is so like you see it and you're just like, oh yeah,
It's like
if you've
Sin
ever seen it
City
before,
and
yeah,
300, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
that like sort of black and white and sort of hard noir and then like pops of red. I found all of those things really interesting. I was most capable at the like Jim Lee style was very like technical, putting together all the pieces and like building a whole person muscle by muscle with no fat on them at all, essentially.
Yeah.
That made it's actually easier than trying to figure out fat because it's easier when you can put a detail somewhere as opposed to not. When you have to
Okay.
leave gaps, it's actually harder to draw. Um, but I got in right when that was happening, so there was this like explosion of good and interesting.
Okay.
Um, and so I got a little taste of like, okay, and then all of a sudden, oh, look at all this amazing stuff coming out, right? So I jumped on
Okay.
that bandwagon.
So, and also, though, in your teen years is when you found 40K.
Mhm.
And I suspect the finding 40K story is not a story we have time for at this moment because it'll make us want to talk 40K for the next 45 minutes. So let's just say, here's what I want to know. Make a pie chart. Percentages. What percentage of 40K's appeal was the hobby, and what percentage was the game when you first found it?
I'm going to tell the story.
Tell a story then. Whatever.
Yes. All right. So Vince and I got into magic,
Okay.
and we ran around to stores
Vince
for
is
magic.
Chuck's lifelong best friend.
Yeah, we've been brothers. Like
Yeah.
we've lived together. We've all kinds of stuff. Um, we ran around to all the stores we could get to buy magic. We were just hitting the age where we could work. We got a shitty job in a factory, but we got those paychecks, and those paychecks has bought boxes of magic cards.
Yeah. Oh
So
my
anyway,
God. Look at all this.
we're going all these places. One of the stores we stopped by at has a sand table. Just not even anything 40K does anymore, but it's literally a sandbox that grown-ups have put on legs so that children can't reach it anymore, and they play 40K in it. Um,
Wow.
we walk up to the table and we see two people about to play. If I remember correctly, it was Eldar versus Ultramarines. Um, the Ultramarine player walked away, and the Eldar player turned to us and he said, he's made these mistakes, and I'm going to do these things, and I'm going to take advantage of those, and I'm going to win this game." And we're like, "Oh,
Okay.
okay." So we hung out and watched because this is such a weird thing. Like
Yeah.
I'd seen model railroads, but nothing else.
Yeah.
And it went down like you said it went down. Um, and me and Vince
And
were
he
very
looked like a
impressed.
genius.
Yeah, and we're just like, "Wow, that's really cool. We would like to do that." But at this point, the miniatures hadn't appealed to me yet. We went and we wanted to play the game.
Uh huh.
We went and got the box set for Christmas and opened it up and started playing it and started gathering it. And was working at a store, and people who knew how to hobby started coming in, and they would show me like, "Oh, this is how I do my thing. This is how this works." And I wanted to continue. The miniatures are so expensive.
Hold on, Chuck. I'm just doing a timeline guess here.
Uh-huh.
Who took the Marines and who took the Orcs? I'm just doing a base. I'm just doing a starting box set guess on timeline here.
I took the Marines.
Okay, because now you're the war boss. So I'm just it
Yeah.
was an important question.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, all right, go
Yeah.
ahead.
I started with Space Wolves. And so I took the
So
reins.
Chuck started in second edition. We now know what box set he's talking
Yep.
about.
Yeah, that too. But then I was working at a store, and the miniatures were so expensive, even with my store discount, that I couldn't get more miniatures, and I painted them up so quickly that I went back and reiterated
Well, you couldn't
on some of them.
dopamine hit at the rate that you did with Magic, right?
No, not at all. Yeah.
Right. That Magic, you were like, oh, I can buy more packs, so I can buy more packs, so I can buy more packs, but it's not like that.
Well, you could also I can play 7 games, right? Where you can play 1 game.
Yes,
40K
exactly.
is much slower in that regard.
Yeah.
Which is probably good for me. I think slowing that
Certainly is
down
good
is
for
just
me.
is good. But people showed me how to make things better, and they got me started on that process. And then they came out with some plastic kits,
Mm-hmm.
and one of those plastic kits was Chaos Dudes with mutation sprues.
Mm-hmm.
I loved it. I love the idea that my guys were like even more customizable.
Mm-hmm.
And then I bought a bunch of undead kits. And working at a store, one of the best things you get is you get to pick up all those bits off the ground at the end of the day, and plus the dice. And then I had this weird, crazy bits boxes, just like stuff people dropped, and I started putting that all on all my chaos guys, and they were all these weird, crazy little growth things, and everyone loved them. And like I said, I get that bit of attention. It's like, oh, you loved that? Here I go. And now I make colossal creatures out of shit I found in the garage, uh, and it's very rewarding.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, I think that it's probably already started for those that are watching this after the fact, but we're fully intending to put Chuck Kit Bashes through the years throughout this interview here. So
Oh
we'll have to
man.
get some pictures from you. I have some of them because some of them have gone away and they went through eBay to get there. But no, we should get some Kit Bashes and put them up here. So now, what do you think the appeal of that is? Do you think that it's different than everybody else? Is it
Mm,
an attention thing?
it's attention. It's I will tell you, even when when I made my sisters a battle, I didn't know I didn't do no, but there was little to no kit bashing. Right. Like I kept
Okay.
it to a minimum. I felt like they're a uniformed team, and I wanted them to feel that way when you looked at them, right? But none of them are posed the same. It bothers me when a bunch of humans are doing the same thing,
Okay.
right? Unless you intentionally wanted that, right? But I like it when there's sort of more action and everybody's doing something, but maybe it's all important, but it's all different, and that
Hmm.
makes them feel different. The silhouette of each model is changed up. So even in that case with the sisters, I did some like arm reposing and stuff like that
I
to
think the
make sure that
fantasy
stays.
versus sci-fi thing hits me hard there. I feel like in fantasy, it's acceptable to have all of your archers or all of your
Mm,
spearmen
mhm.
standing the same, right? As long as it's okay, we're doing a shield wall or we're standing at attention, marching into combat, like that's okay to me. But in sci-fi combat, it's so much more. I'm hiding behind this barrel. I'm diving behind this thing. Like
Yeah,
it doesn't make any sense to me that everybody would be standing the same way together on the battlefield, right?
I
For a
think,
thing.
and also with fantasy, I think like particularly the Warhammer Fantasy game, you're taking like a step back from the field than you are in 40K and looking at even larger combat,
Oh, it's a
and
different
so you
scale.
you don't see the same. You shouldn't see the same level of detail on the people kind of
Yeah,
feel. Whereas
yeah.
40K, this is the story of my team here, right? Like I want to see each of them, the little personality coming out in each of them. And so I think that's always been an interest. And then I'm s- I don't this is interesting. I've thought about trying to how to teach what I do as kit bashing goes, and I can't figure it out because I can't actually figure out how I do it.
Mhm.
But I'm very good. I will. Wife laughs at me sometimes. I'll be sitting there and I'll go, "Oh, I know what I need. Let me go out to the garage," which includes 2 massive boxes of just random bits, plus bits sorted into like 11 different containers. And I would be like, "I need this one bit I know I have." I don't know how that's stored. I don't know how that information got into my head. I don't know how it got recalled, but I go, "Oh, that spot needs that one bit." I'll go out there and I'll find it relatively quickly because somehow I also know where it is.
Yeah, mhm.
I don't know. This is not a process I understand. And I think that ease makes this easier for me, which makes it fun.
I have that sometimes, but then I go and the thing isn't there, and that drives me insane.
Oh,
I was so certain that this thing was right where here, and I came right here to get the thing, and it's not here. But I have kids, so anything's possible.
yeah.
Okay, before we continue on with Chuck, I want to let you guys all know a few things. First of all, if you become a member of our YouTube, in addition to getting even more of these amazing battle reps we've been making that are short form and have commentary from the actual players. The production value just took a massive step up if you haven't seen this recently.
Mhm.
In addition to getting that, you also get the after hours party from Fight Club. You also get part two of Chasing the Narrative. Part two of Chasing the Narrative is where we talk about what some random topic that's usually silly. Chuck did an absolutely excessive amount of cosplay in his life that he's never not cosplay. Excuse me, I said the wrong
LARPing.
thing. LARPing. Cosplay would be better if it could have been cosplay, but LARPing. Chuck has done an extensive amount of LARPing in his life. It's something I've actually never done, despite having played every kind of role playing game. So we're going to talk LARPing stories with Chuck in part two for those that stick around. So you can find all of that by just clicking the join button underneath this video. And with that, we're going to get back to our lovely Chuck. So Chuck, here's a thing that entertains me greatly. You're an incredible artist, and also you're partially colorblind.
Yes.
So which kind of colorblind are you? Because if I guess, I'm going to be wrong.
It's red and green,
Okay.
and I'm not entirely red and green colorblind. I'm red and green color like resistant.
Okay. What does that
Which
mean?
it I'll try to give you the nuts and bolts of it is if you put a very saturated red and very saturated green next to each other,
Okay.
I'll be able to tell you which one's which.
Okay.
But if they're not next to each other,
Okay.
they're both brown.
Okay.
And then the less saturated that red or green is, the more just like, I don't know what
So
that is.
your name is in a bubble on the screen. Do you know what color that is?
That's a really good question, and it's green.
See, there you go. It's green.
Because you know what? In the upper left, the probably viewers can't see, it says how long we've been live in a red box.
Oh, is that helpful?
Yes. If that had not
Okay.
been there, I would have been like, 50-50.
Okay, so and that's your whole life, born that way.
Yeah, as far as I can tell you. I don't
You
think
just
it
figured it out at some point that you were seeing it differently than everybody. Okay. So is that frustrating as an artist?
no, no, not very often. I think the most frustration it comes down to is purples. Purples are very specific, and if you highlight purple wrong, it looks bad.
Okay.
And I don't see it the same way other people do, so it's very easy for me to make purple look bad.
So do you just
But
avoid purple then?
I've just memorized a few mechanical steps that allow me to do a thing that other people will think is good, and
Okay.
narrowed those down to the ones that I also think are good,
That
and
you
those are the only
also will
ways I
like
use
when it's
purple.
done?
Yeah,
That's great.
we just have
So
shared ground.
this wasn't a was it has it just never really been a problem? I know that sometimes I'll show you a thing that Stephanie and I are working on and ask you for feedback, and you'll be like, "Well, I don't know.
I don't know.
This is a bad spectrum of colors you've selected, and I'm not
Right,
helpful now."
and I guess it's what I would say is it has been a problem. My first career that I attempted to have was as a graphic designer. That's a poor choice when you are red green colorblind
Okay,
because, as you probably don't notice, but it's true, everybody uses red and green in everything.
in everything.
If what they're showing you isn't trying to get you to look at it, right? If they're trying to like catch your eye, they're going to use blue and white or yellow or something like that. But if they're trying to make it comfortable, they're going to use red and green. So a ton of the work that I would be doing look bad. And then also when I look at people, they look different.
Okay,
So I can't color balance a picture of a person for anything.
okay.
Uh,
So you tried to be a graphic artist and went badly. Is basically what this
yeah.
sounds like to me.
Also, I like got 3 or 4 jobs that were like super corrupt and weird. So I was like, I don't like this business at all. I can't do it very well as I thought I would, and then like, ugh, it's ugly. So I'm out of here.
So the last thing I want to talk about with you before we move on to part two is your nerd based career path, because I think it's people are going to be amused by this. I think so. You have so just to fill everybody in, you've played role playing games forever,
Mhm.
Dungeons and Dragons since before 40K, right?
Yeah. Oh,
Okay,
forever. I started
so
Dungeons& and Dragons in like 5th grade or something.
I have specific wonderful memories of playing Vampire the Masquerade with you.
Mhm.
So I know you've played that. We played the Jihad card game, which we both loved and
Yeah.
probably both miss if we're being honest with ourselves.
We have a group of people at work who have gathered all their cards around with one person every once in a while. We bust them out for lunch.
Oh, so good.
It's so good.
All right. So role playing games, video games, magic, card games, all of the things, right? and then at some point you're maybe a late teen and you end up working in a game store. What
Mhm.
happened there?
I'm gonna go back real quick because where we're going, we're gonna want a piece of information. I didn't just play a little D&D.
Okay.
Uh, I played a lot of D&D. I bought every role-playing book, core book I could get my hands on, and I built my own role-playing games. Um, I really liked the idea that you could build a system to emulate life, um, and use that. So I was very into the math and the system portion that would then allow you to then create a story out of it. I liked
Hmm.
the idea that this math could generate a story. So I went heavy into that stuff. I really
Making
enjoyed
your
it.
own role-playing game and using toys that you have around or Legos or whatever is actually a theme of Jason the Narrative.
Yeah.
It's come up on almost all of the episodes, which amuses me greatly. We
Well, I think
all
it's
at some point were sitting around going, I can't afford all the things that I want. What if I
but I
just make it
could make them
myself?
myself. Yes.
That's exactly right.
These Hero Quest skeletons will be in every adventure.
Oh yes. And the Hero Quest terrain
Mhm.
with the bookshelves and the things, I found that all that actually looked great with Lego people and Lego sets.
Yeah.
Just mix that right up. Yeah. Okay. So go ahead. Sorry.
Anyway, so I think that's really core too. Like we talked about the art, but when you talked about it as me as an artist, I actually thought in my head, I'm actually a creator. It doesn't have to
Okay.
be particularly art. I enjoy
All right.
making things that other people enjoy. And since we're going to talk about role playing games, I think it would be important to add that like I made a lot of that. I've play tested 3 different games that I've made over the years. All of them have been okay. Nothing like,
Okay.
oh, this is groundbreaking, but
This is the thing.
decent enough. Then I got into Magic, and Magic took me to a bunch of stores. It showed me a bunch of new art, like tons of it. I actually started going to art walks and stuff to meet the artists who were making Magic cards and see the art in person.
And some of them were even nice, good humans.
So, yeah,
A couple of them.
a
A
few were really
couple of them
fun.
were nice. We'll leave it at that. Please
Yeah.
continue.
And then like the story I told earlier, Magic got me into 40K. It's one of the things we didn't mention about 40K when it first started is John Blanche is amazing. His style is right there with where I wish I could make art. And so that also was a good hook, right? I spent a lot of time looking at the books, enjoying
Mhm.
that. And then 40K sort of got more difficult as I had a child. And then I got divorced, and then I didn't have a child as much.
You had
Um,
to you had a child sometimes.
yeah, like on the weekends, for a long time there, I was working weekends, and I'd have them a couple days during the week, that kind of stuff. Um, and then some friends come to me, and they're like, "Hey, here's a foam sword. You should just hold it for a second." Like, "Oh, I do have a foam sword. Oh, I can hit you with the sword." I was like, "Oh, but I also have a foam sword." "Oh, well, I have to work to hit you with the foam sword." He's like, "Yes, but what if you also got to wear a cool costume and make a whole fake human being and do it?" I was
That's
like,
okay.
"Oh,
What
that
a
sounds
wonderful
great."
segue for part 2.
I launched into that, and then as that sort of ended, I came back to 40K, and I finally went to a tournament because I didn't know who to play with, but I wanted to play some 40K. In tournaments, turns out that's my jam. Uh, I enjoyed that quite a bit, and that launched me into what I'd call the super hobby phase. I painted miniatures up until that point to make them uh, acceptable for play, but
Okay.
tournaments meant I could win something with how I painted my miniatures, or how I
Mhm.
sculpted my miniatures, or kit bashed. And so I went into this whole different phase of trying to be and like not just produce painted models, but like artistic device, artwork
Mhm.
in model form.
Yeah, that's great. So, we actually did a pretty good Mitch there, which
Yeah.
is what we call, I ask a question, and the answer to the question is not the answer to my question. However, it's more interesting than my question was. So, just to fill everybody in on the direction we were going, Chuck has managed a worked
Oh
for a
yeah.
game store. Then and we say the Mitch with ultimate affection because it makes the show better when
Yeah.
Mitch does that.
Oh, for sure. It's like here's a whole
It's
bunch of
like
information you didn't
I'm
know
going to
you
say,
wanted.
Mitch, question A, and Mitch is going to no,
No,
answer
no.
Z,
Yeah,
and it's
this
going to
is
be
way better.
25 minutes long, and it's really interesting, but it has nothing to do with your question, and my brain just goes, okay. Anyways, so Chuck worked at a game store. Then
Hmm.
that game store bought another game store that Chuck managed that I
Hmm.
hung out at with because it was basically our friend Clubhouse.
Yep.
And then Chuck has also worked at Wizards for a long time,
Almost 15 years.
almost 15 years. Did I miss Nerd? Did I miss Nerd Jobs?
No, the in between jobs were all very sad.
because
I think
they
the
weren't nerd
highlight of that
focused.
is rent to own, where I learned about what my privilege was and became a much better person
Oh,
because I got to be exposed to people who didn't have everything they wanted, or
uh-huh.
how their lives didn't work well. And that is a huge turning point for me as a person.
Right,
Uh, just being able to see the real world, not just see my manicured suburbs that I'd lived in my entire lives.
right.
But it's certainly not nerdy, just good.
No. Yeah, it's just a good thing to go through. So, the other thing that I think of for you as like a core trait, and we talked about it a little bit. We talked about it a little bit as we talked about your desire to fix the situation around you.
Mhm,
Um, you're an incredible manager, and I've never been
mhm,
managed by you, but we've both managed people quite a bit in our careers, and we've talked about it a lot. And I identify, and we've talked about this. I identify as a leader and not a manager. I'm good at let's go do this thing.
mhm,
Won't it be great? And everybody else goes, yeah, we should go do that thing. That does sound great. But the actual activity of getting everybody organized and doing their best to get to that point is not what I'm good at. But you're amazing at that.
mhm.
And so I feel like we should talk about that a little bit for those people that I would guess that a bunch of our listeners, our viewers are at points in their life where they're managing people, maybe for the first time. It's very common in the nerdy world in particular to get promoted out of the job that you knew exactly how to do into the job that where you're now managing the people that are doing the thing you know how to do, but you don't actually know how to manage those people. I think
Mhm.
everybody's been in that place. So I thought we'd spend the last few minutes of this part one talking about kind of Chuck's views on that.
Yeah.
So you love managing, first of all. So let's just start with easy. Start
Mhm.
easy. Why do you like managing people? Lots of people don't. Why do you enjoy it?
So I'm going to change some vocabulary. I don't
Okay.
really like managing people. No
Okay.
one does.
All right.
That's the crap part of the job.
All right.
I love coaching.
Okay.
I love helping people become the best they can be.
Uh-huh.
I have a bunch of people who work for me. I meet with them regularly, and the first question I ask them, first question I ask them is how they're doing, how things are going, and I mean that.
Hmm.
Tell me what's going on. I want to know what's going on in your life. I want to know if there's a chance that I can help you with something. I'm going to. That that means that I'm helping people. I'm making people feel supported,
Hmm.
and then I'm going to follow up with, well, what are you going to do next? Because my chief job as a manager is to get you to move away from my position that I have for you. You need to get better. I want aggressive, hungry people who are going to improve. And then, so from there, the conversation just oscillates around like, what do you like the tactics of how you're going to get better. And it's a lot of just asking them what they think they need to do and supporting their work. Um, that process of being the person who helps a person grow and become something else, that is way more soul feeding than anything else I've done in my life. And I get to get paid for doing it is a pretty good combination. Like I highly recommend if you can find that, do that, whatever it is.
I think it's important that people hear. I'm going to re-articulate a thing you said because
Mhm.
I think it's really important. I think that people think that managing is about accomplishing goals and looking good about the team that you.
Oh,
And
no.
well, that feels good because I've been that guy. I've been the I have the sales team of people and sold more than anyone's ever sold of our stuff this year. Like I've been that guy and it does feel good. But you know what feels even better than that is taking that focus and putting it back on the people that did the work. And you know why that's so fun? Because that's what the job actually is.
Yeah. Actually, one of the things that I have lots of meetings with lots of other managers, right? And the core group of people that I talk to about management, one of the things we laugh about is some managers will talk about we or my team.
Yeah.
Those are good managers. Other managers will say I,
Hmm.
and those are bad managers. And that's almost 100% effective.
I actually don't like my team either.
Yeah.
I like our team.
Sure.
Like
Yeah.
there's even nuance to that where it's like, hey, no, we're really all working together. We
Yeah.
have a where I work, there's the I have this is very related to what Chuck's saying. So I'm going to share a little bit about me. Um, so I don't manage anybody.
Hmm.
I have no direct reports. I don't do anything remotely related to that. However, I have a sales job that involves a team of people that are required to make a sale.
Mhm.
That team of people is in complete support of me. If those people mess up, I could go to their bosses. Totally appropriate. And for me to say, this resource that's working with me didn't do well, I could totally do that. Never done that. But I could totally do that.
Yeah.
And one of the people on, and so there's a team of like 8 people where I'm literally trying to help them succeed, but I'm not their manager.
Yeah.
And I love it
Yeah.
because
It's
they
a
come to
leadership
me.
role.
Yeah, because they come to me. It's a leadership role. Exactly. They come to me and they say, I have this problem. And I say, well, have we thought about it this way? And they go, oh my gosh, I hadn't thought about it that way. And then they leave all happy and it's amazing.
Mhm.
There's a guy on the team, though. It's not always a guy on my team right now, whose job it is to bring me new connections, people I haven't met before that might need to buy
Hmm.
something, to find new people at my customers that are on teams that need what we do. His job is terrible. He is a he is what you could think of as a advanced version of a cold caller,
Yeah.
and his job is terrible. And the people that do that job are always like 23, and they were hired straight out of some incredibly impressive college where they did incredibly well. And now they're on this team where they're being told that they're going to grow into a salesperson.
Mhm.
And the team and the sales reps that are most successful can be directly mapped to how many of those people they've gotten promoted.
Mhm.
And it's not because those people doing a better job is why the sales rep succeeded. It's because it's all one thing. Because that was an eager 22-year-old, 23-year-old who wants to succeed in their career, who's doing a terrible thing that none of the 40 somethings want to do. And if you approach that right and you help that person, suddenly it's amazing. And we've not talked about that, Chuck. So I thought you'd get a kick out of like, I always have that person. I've been there 2 years. I've had four of those people so far that I'm trying to get that. So
Yep.
I've got one promoted and three left the company. Let's not think too much about that. But anyways, I thought you'd get a kick out of that.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm one of their targets. I get the emails and the phone calls and all this
Oh,
stuff.
sure.
I'm like, yeah, I
Not for
make that
my
guy's.
guys specifically, but
No,
yeah.
no, but yeah, I definitely make that job hard. I
Yeah,
don't want
because it's
all that.
terrible. Because it's terrible. Because
But
people
the
want to buy
volume is
things, but they
ridiculous.
don't want to be sold things. And
Yeah,
it's really complicated.
when
Anyways,
they don't want to be sold things when they're trying to get their morning.
yeah,
Which is
I'm gonna find a 40K player from the meta who's a professional salesperson, and we're gonna go deep. That's gonna be a
oof.
chasing the narrative that happens because there's a lot of science and critical thought to what I do that I never share.
Mhm.
So anyway, that not enough about me. Back to Chuck. So I think that your view of how those teams work is amazing, but there's another thing that you do that is very unusual, and I'm going to pay you this as a significant compliment. When Chuck asks you a question, presence is the wrong word. You're present. When you ask a question of someone, you are there and you are listening and you are attentive. You want to hear the answer and you want to think about the answer and you want to share energy or feelings back at that person
Mhm.
that's appropriate to that question. And you genuinely care about that little tiny interaction, no matter what it is really important to you. And I think, in my opinion, that that's what makes you such a good.
Oh, for sure.
It's that you have that particular attitude of, yeah, I'm going to help you. It's going to be great. But then when it comes down to it, there's a part of you that's so curious
Mhm.
about what that person's going to say, but also so calm about it, right? I don't know what you want to say about that, but I just thought it was a good compliment to end with.
But I appreciate it a lot. I agree. That's a really good way to say it too. Um, I don't really know what else to say about it. It is a core part of my personality that
Mhm.
has changed drastically over the years. As a kid, it was almost frustrating to have that as a personality type
Yeah,
because the empathy also goes the other way. When somebody is really sad or hurt, you get to like here, you get to go along for the ride, but also be supportive right now.
right.
Right? It takes a lot of resilience that I had to build over the years before that was a comfortable place to be as a person.
Yeah,
But yeah, I think so. I think it's easy for me to say that most to all of the people who report to me at work are really comfortable talking to me. And there's a
yeah,
whole bunch of people who used to work for me who still reach out and talk to me, right? And to me, that's the greatest compliment. That person found my presence so valuable that they would reach out to like an ex coworker, which we all love to say, "Oh, we'll keep in touch."
Yeah, we're not
But the
going to
second
do
some of that
that.
person walks out that door of the building, we're like, "Pfft, "What was their name? I don't know."
Yeah. Maybe they'll get hired again, and we can start caring about them again
Yeah,
sometime in the
but
future.
not until then. Yeah. So this, I don't know. There's a lot to that. I like knowing that I'm making the world a better place,
Mhm.
even if it is just like a little bit at a time.
Right. Well, that's great. Okay, so I want to thank Chuck for coming on Chasing the Narrative. Chuck is the first of a project. Chuck is going to get interviewed. We're going to have Mitch on, and then one of them, or maybe both of them, I don't know, is going to interview me. So
It
we're
might
going to
take
get
both of us.
whatever, because I'm
Uh,
so difficult to interview, Chuck. That's really what it
it's
is.
true. You rarely will talk about yourself fast.
It's very hard for me. I know. Um, so thank you very much, Chuck. If you guys would like to see part two, you do need to join and become a member of our YouTube. It's $10 a month. It does include a great deal of content, including the late rounds of the Battle for the Generations, which is going up right now. I believe we're recording this on Sunday, and the third episode of round one is going up today. This isn't coming out on that day, so tell you when it's recording. So that's what's happening now. I appreciate all of you for watching. I hope that you found this entertaining and also got something valuable out of it for your own life. And now we will see you, those of you who really care about this. See you in part two. Bye now.